Intimacy from Where I'm Calling From. Selected stories by Raymond Carver. Intimacy. I have some business out west anyway, so I stop off in this little town where my former wife lives. We haven't seen each other in 4 years, but from time to time, when something of mine appeared or was written about me in the magazines or papers, a profile or an interview, I sent her these things. I don't know what I had in mind, except I thought she might be interested. In any case, she never responded. It is 9 a.m. I haven't called, and it's true I don't know what I am going to find. But she lets me in. She doesn't seem surprised. We don't shake hands, much less kiss each other. She takes me into the living room. As I sit down, she brings me some coffee. Then she comes out with what's on her mind. She says I've caused her anguish, made her feel exposed and humiliated. Make no mistake, I feel I'm home. She says, but then you were into betrayal early. You always felt comfortable with betrayal. No, she says, that's not true. Not in the beginning, at any rate. You were different then. But I guess I was different too. Everything was different, she says. No, it was after you turned 35 or 36, whenever it was. Around in there anyway. Your mid-30s somewhere. Then you started in. You really started in. You turned on me. You did it up pretty then. You must be proud of yourself. She says, sometimes I could scream. She says she wishes I'd forget about the hard times, the bad times, when I talk about back then. Spend some time on the good times, she says. Weren't there some good times? She wishes I'd get off that other subject. She's bored with it, sick of hearing about it. Your private hobby horse, she says. What's done is done, and water under the bridge, she says. A tragedy? Yeah. God knows it was a tragedy and then some, but why keep it going? Don't you ever get tired of dredging up that old business? She says, let go of the past for Christ's sake. Those old hurts. You must have some other arrows in your quiver, she says. She says, you know something? I think you're sick. I think you're crazy as a bedbug. Hey, you don't believe the things they're saying about you, do you? Don't believe them for a minute, she says. Listen, I could tell them a thing or two. Let them talk to me about it if they want to hear a story, she says. Are you listening to me? I'm listening, I say. I'm all ears, I say. She says, I've really had a belly full of it, Buster. Who asked you here today anyway? I sure as hell didn't. You just show up and walk in. What the hell do you want from me? Blood? You want more blood? I thought you had your fill by now, she says. Think of me as dead. I want to be left in peace now. That's all I want anymore is to be left in peace and forgotten about. I'm 45 years old, she says. 45 going on 55 or 65. Just lay off, will you? She says. Why don't you wipe the blackboard clean and see what you have left after that? Why don't you start with a clean slate? See how far that gets you, she says. She has to laugh at this. I laugh too, but it's nerves. She says, you know something? I had my chance once, but I let it go. I just let it go. I don't guess I ever told you, but now look at me. Look! Take a good look while you're at it. You threw me away, you son of a bitch, she says. I was younger then and a better person. Maybe you were too, she says. A better person, I mean. You had to be. You were better then or I wouldn't have had anything to do with you, she says. I loved you so much once. I loved you to the point of distraction. I did. More than anything in the whole wide world. Imagine that. What a laugh that is now. Can you imagine it? We were so intimate once upon a time. I can't believe it now. I think that's the strangest thing of all now. The memory of being that intimate with somebody. We were so intimate I could puke. I can't imagine ever being that intimate with somebody else, and I haven't been, she says. Frankly, and I mean this, I want to be kept out of it from here on out. Who do you think you are anyway? You think you're God or somebody? You're not fit to lick God's boots or anyone else's for that matter. Mister, you've been hanging out with the wrong people. But what do I know? I don't even know what I know any longer. I know I don't like what you've been dishing out. I know that much. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Am I right? Right, I say. Right as rain. She says, you'll agree to anything, won't you? You give in too easy. You always did. You don't have any principles, not one. Anything to avoid a fuss. But that's neither here nor there, she says. You remember the time I pulled the knife on you? She says this as if in passing, as if it's not important. Vaguely, I say. I must have deserved it, but I don't remember much about it. Go ahead. Why don't you? Tell me about it. She says, I'm beginning to understand something now. I think I know why you're here. Yeah, I know why you're here, even if you don't. Because you're a sly boots. You know why you're here. You're on a fishing expedition. You're hunting for matrial. Am I getting warm? Am I right? Tell me about the knife, I say. She says, if you want to know, I'm real sorry I didn't use that knife. I am. I really and truly am. I've thought and thought about it, and I'm sorry I didn't use it. I had the chance, but I hesitated. I hesitated and was lost, as somebody or other said. But I should have used it. The hell with everything and everybody. I should have nicked your arm with it at least. At least that. Well, you didn't, I say. I thought you were going to cut me with it, but you didn't. I took it away from you. She says, you were always lucky. You took it away and then you slapped me. Still, I regret I didn't use that knife just a little bit. Even a little would have been something to remember me by. I remember a lot, I say. I say that, then wish I hadn't. She says, Amen, brother. That's the bone of contention here, if you haven't noticed. That's the whole problem. But like I said, in my opinion, you remember the wrong things. You remember the low, shameful things, and that's why you got interested when I brought up the knife. She says, I wonder if you have any regret for whatever that's worth on the market these days. Not much, I guess, but you ought to be a specialist in it by now. Regret, I say. It doesn't interest me much, to tell the truth. Regret is not a word I use very often. I guess I mainly don't have it. I admit I hold to the dark view of things. Sometimes anyway, but regret? I don't think so. She says, You're a real son of a bitch. Did you know that? A ruthless, cold-hearted son of a bitch. Did anybody ever tell you that? You did, I say. Plenty of times. She says, I always speak the truth, even when it hurts. You'll never catch me in a lie. She says, my eyes were open a long time ago, but by then it was too late. I had my chance, but I let it slide through my fingers. I even thought for a while you'd come back. Why'd I think that anyway? I must have been out of my mind. I could cry my eyes out now, but I wouldn't give you the satisfaction. She says, You know what? I think if you were on fire right now, if you suddenly burst into flame this minute, I wouldn't throw a bucket of water on you. She laughs at this. Then her face closes down again. She says, "Why in the hell are you here? You want to hear some more? I could go on for days. I think I know why you turned up, but I don't want to hear it from you." When I don't answer, when I just keep sitting there, she goes on. She says, "After that time, when you went away, nothing much mattered after that. Not the kids, not God, not anything. It was like I didn't know what hit me. It was like I had stopped living. My life had been going along, and then it just stopped. It didn't just come to a stop, it screeched to a stop. And I thought, if I'm not worth anything to him, well, I'm not worth anything to myself or anybody else either. That was the worst thing I felt. I thought my heart would break. What am I saying? It did break. Of course it broke. It broke just like that, and it's still broke if you want to know. And so there you have it in a nutshell. My eggs in one basket, she says. A tisket, a tasket, and all my rotten eggs in one basket. She says, "You found somebody else for yourself, didn't you? It didn't take long. And you're happy now. That's what they say about you anyway. He's happy now. Hey, I read everything you sent. You think I don't? Listen, I know your heart, mister. I always did. I knew it back then, and I know it now. I know your heart inside and out, and you don't ever forget it. Your heart is a jungle, a dark forest. It's a garbage pail, if you want to know. Let them talk to me if they want to ask somebody something. I know how you operate. Just let them come around here and I'll give them an earful. I was there. I served, buddy boy. Then you held me up for display and ridicule in your so-called work for any Tom or Harry to pity or pass judgment on. Ask me if I cared. Ask me if it embarrassed me. Go ahead, ask." "No," I say. "I won't ask that. I don't want to get into that," I say. "Damn straight you don't," she says. "And you know why, too," she says. "Honey, no offense, but sometimes I think I could shoot you and watch you kick," she says. "You can't look me in the eyes, can you?" she says. And this is exactly what she says. "You can't even look me in the eyes when I'm talking to you." So, okay. I look her in the eyes. She says, "Right. Okay," she says. "Now we're getting someplace, maybe. That's better. You can tell a lot about the person you're talking to from his eyes. Everybody knows that. But you know something else? There's nobody in this whole world who would tell you this, but I can tell you. I have the right. I earned that right, Sonny. You have yourself confused with somebody else, and that's the pure truth of it. But what do I know? They'll say in 100 years, they'll say, 'Who was she anyway?'" She says, "In any case, you sure as hell have me confused with somebody else. Hey, I don't even have the same name anymore. Not the name I was born with, not the name I lived with you with, not even the name I had 2 years ago. What is this? What this in hell all about anyway? Let me say something. I want to be left alone now. Please, that's not a crime." She says, "Don't you have someplace else you should be? Some plane to catch? Shouldn't you be somewhere far from here at this very minute?" "No," I say. I say it again. "No, no place," I say. "I don't have any place I have to be." And then I do something. I reach over and take the sleeve of her blouse between my thumb and forefinger. That's all. I just touch it that way. And then I just bring my hand back. She doesn't draw away. She doesn't move. Then here's the thing I do next. I get down on my knees, a big guy like me, and I take the hem of her dress. What am I doing on the floor? I wish I could say, but I know it's where I ought to be. and I'm there on my knees holding onto the hem of her dress. She is still for a minute, but in a minute she says, "Hey, it's all right, stupid. You're so dumb sometimes. Get up now. I'm telling you to get up. Listen, it's okay. I'm over it now. It took me a while to get over it. What do you think? Did you think it wouldn't? Then you walk in here and suddenly the whole cruddy business is back." I felt a need to ventilate, but and I know, it's over and it's done with now. She says, "For the longest while, honey, I was inconsolable." Inconsolable, she says. Put that word in your little notebook. I can tell you from experience that is the saddest word in the English language. Anyway, I got over it finally. Time is a gentleman, a wise man said. Or else maybe a worn-out old woman. One or the other, anyway. She says, "I have a life now. It's different. It's a different kind of life than yours, but I guess we don't need to compare. It's my life. And that's the important thing I have to realize as I get older. Don't feel too bad, anyway," she says. I mean, it's all right to feel a little bad, maybe. That won't hurt you. That's only to be expected after all, even if you can't move yourself to regret. She says, "Now you have to get up and out of here. My husband will be along pretty soon for his lunch." How could I explain this kind of thing? It's crazy, but I'm still on my knees holding the hem of her dress. I won't let it go. I'm like a terrier, and it's like I'm stuck to the floor. It's like I can't move. She says, "Get up now. What is it? You still want something from me? What do you want? You want me to forgive you? Is that why you're doing this? That's it, isn't it? That's the reason you came all this way." The knife thing kind of perked you up, too. I think you'd forgotten about that. But you needed me to remind you. Okay, I'll say something if you'll just go. She says, "I forgive you." She says, "Are you satisfied now? Is that better? Are you happy?" He's happy now, she says. But I'm still there, knees to the floor. She says, "Did you hear what I said? You have to go now. Hey, stupid. Honey, I said I forgive you, and I even reminded you about the knife thing. I can't think what else I can do now. You've got it made in the shade, baby. Come on now. You have to get out of here. Get up. That's right. You're still a big guy, aren't you? Here's your hat. Don't forget your hat. You never used to wear a hat. I never in my life saw you in a hat before." She says, "Listen to me now. Look at me. Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you." She moves closer. She's about 3 inches from my face. We haven't been this close in a long time. I take these little breaths that she can't hear, and I wait. I think my heart slows way down, I think. She says, "You just tell it like you have to, I guess, and forget the rest. Like always. You've been doing that for so long now anyway, it shouldn't be hard for you." She says, "There. I've done it. You're free, aren't you? At least you think you are anyway. Free at last." That's a joke, but don't laugh. Anyway, you feel better, don't you? She walks with me down the hall. She says, "I can't imagine how I'd explain this if my husband was to walk in this very minute. But who really cares anymore, right? In the final analysis, nobody gives a damn anymore. Besides which, I think everything that can happen that way has already happened." His name's Fred, by the way. He's a decent guy and works hard for his living. He cares for me. So she walks me to the front door, which has been standing open all this while. The door that was letting in the light and fresh air this morning and sounds off the street, all of which we had ignored. I look outside, and Jesus, there's this white moon hanging in the morning sky. I can't think when I've ever seen anything so remarkable, but I'm afraid to comment on it. I am. I don't know what might happen. I might break into tears even. I might not understand a word I'd say. She says, maybe you'll be back sometime. Maybe you won't. This'll wear off, you know. Pretty soon you'll start feeling bad again. Maybe it'll make a good story, she says. But I don't want to know about it if it does. I say goodbye. She doesn't say anything anymore. She looks at her hands and then she puts them into the pockets of her dress. She shakes her head. She goes back inside, and this time she closes the door. I move off down the sidewalk. Some kids are tossing a football at the end of the street, but they aren't my kids, and they aren't her kids either. There are these leaves everywhere, even in the gutters, piles of leaves wherever I look. They're falling off the limbs as I walk. I can't take a step without putting my shoe into leaves. Somebody ought to make an effort here. Somebody ought to get a rake and take care of this.